So the first big life change that we're going to look at is what happens when you move. And this is becoming more and more common every year. Hey everyone, welcome to Coffee with Casey, the weekly Medicare conversation that helps you navigate with confidence. I'm Casey Album, and whether this is your first Coffee with Casey or you've been joining me here already, I'm glad you're here. For those of you that don't know me, I'm the senior Medicare advisor with the Album Insurance Group. We're a family-owned agency in Margate, Florida, who's been helping people navigate Medicare for more than 30 years. As an agency, we've had the privilege of helping thousands of people navigate Medicare and make confident decisions. And I've personally helped hundreds of families through this same transition over the last couple of years. Over the years, some of my clients have started calling me their Medicare co-pilot. And I think a lot of that is because of the way that I approach my job. Besides helping with people with Medicare, though, I'm also a licensed pilot. And one thing that flying has taught me is that every successful flight starts with a plan. So before you ever take off, you have to understand your route, prepare for changing conditions, and know all of your alternates and options if something unexpected happens. And I believe that Medicare should work the exact same way. So my role isn't to tell you what to do. It's to help make sure that you understand your options, help you think through the trade-offs, and help you navigate one of the biggest healthcare decisions that you'll make in retirement, if not in life in general. So grab a cup of coffee and let's navigate Medicare together. One of the biggest misconceptions about Medicare is that it's a one-time decision. You enroll, you put the card in your wallet, and then you never think about it again. But here's what I've learned after helping hundreds of families. Life changes. People move. Doctors retire. New prescriptions get added. Health changes. Spouses unfortunately get sick or pass away. And sometimes your retirement plans change in midstream. The real question isn't, will life change? The real question is, will your Medicare strategy still work when it does? Type life in the comments if you've had a major change in the last 5 years. So the first big life change that we're going to look at is what happens when you move. And this is becoming more and more common every year. Maybe you're moving because you want to be closer to your children or your grandchildren. If my wife was on the stream right now, she would tell you that the whole purpose of having children is to have grandchildren. Maybe you're becoming a snowbird. You're spending half the year in one place, half the year in another place. Maybe retirement's taking you somewhere where you've always wanted to live. Here's something many people don't realize. Moving can also create new Medicare opportunities. If you're enrolled in a Medicare Advantage plan, for example, and you end up moving outside of your plan's service area, you may qualify for a special enrollment period that gives you the opportunity to choose a different type of coverage without having to answer underwriting questions. For people who missed their initial Medigap open enrollment window, this can create another opportunity to choose freedom-based coverage. If you knew a move could open up options that you didn't have before, wouldn't it make sense to understand those options before making a decision? Well, that's exactly why planning ahead matters. Life change number 2, your doctor retires or leaves your plan. This is happening a lot lately. In fact, it's happened a lot more often than most people expect. You've got not only doctors retiring and selling, but you've got practices merging, hospital systems changing, and then we see it in the news all the time. There's contracts that aren't renewed. Memorial and Florida Blue, Aetna and Moffitt. If you're on original Medicare with a Medicare supplement, usually your next step is pretty simple. You just find another doctor or hospital who accepts Medicare. That's it. But if you're on a network-based plan, the conversation often starts with, well, let's see who's still in the provider directory. And of course, you're hoping that your provider directory is still accurate. Not saying one approach is right for everyone, but I do think it's worth asking yourself, how important is it to me to choose my doctor versus choosing one from a list that some insurance company chose for me? Life change number three, your prescriptions, your medicines change. Very few people take the exact same medicines at 75 that they took at 65. Life changes, prescriptions change, costs can change. One advantage of pairing original Medicare with a standalone Part D plan is that your prescription coverage is selected based on your medications. Your plan is not just bundled into your overall medical plan. And that gives you the flexibility to review and optimize your drug coverage every year without having to change your overall Medicare coverage strategy. Sometimes people on bundle plans discover that they're making compromises. Can I see the doctors that I want, or can I get the prescriptions that I need? And they're trying to balance the two very carefully. Now, there's no perfect answer for everyone, but it's something that I strongly encourage people to think through before they ever need it. Life change number four is what happens when your health changes. Now, none of us ever like to think about that, do we? But it's reality. One day we're healthy. The next, we need a cardiologist, an oncologist, a neurologist, a second opinion. This is the point where people stop thinking about monthly premiums, start thinking about access. Who do I want treating me? Can I get there? Will they see me? How difficult is it to make that happen? I often tell people, you don't choose your Medicare strategy for the day you enroll. You choose it for the day when something unexpected happens. And it's a lot harder to make changes down the road when you suddenly find out that it's not working the way that you had planned. Life change number five, your priorities change. When people first retire, they're often thinking about monthly costs. But 10 years later, 15 years later, 20 years later, most of them tell me something completely different. They value simplicity. They value predictability. They value freedom and peace of mind. I find that very interesting because what people value often changes just as much as their health changes. So one question that I often ask clients when we're sitting down together is, when you're 75 or 80, what do you hope your healthcare feels like? Not what it costs, how it feels, and how it feels if something serious happens. And that one question usually changes the entire conversation. Now, notice what every one of these situations had in common. None of them were unusual. They're simply life, right? The best Medicare strategy isn't designed around who you are today. It's designed around the person that you're going to become over the next 5, 10, 15, or even 20 years. And that's why I always encourage people to think beyond today's premium and think about tomorrow's possibilities. So let's go through some common questions that I'm often asked on this topic. If I have to move to another state, do I have to change my Medicare? Well, that's a great question. And it all depends on the type of coverage that you have. But a move can also create new opportunities. If you're on a Medicare Advantage plan, for example, this gives you a second bite at the apple because when you move, you're entitled to what's called a special enrollment period, which up to 63 days after your move date, you can switch to a Medicare supplement plan in your new area, go back into original Medicare, choose a prescription drug plan, and you get to bypass the health underwriting questions. So for someone that may have had some pre-existing conditions, thought Medicare coverage was never going to be available to them, this can give you a second bite at the apple. Another thing to consider is that if you're moving from a state where your Medicare supplement plan was issued on what's called an attained age pricing, that simply means that every age has a different premium. Well, if you move to a state that uses issue age pricing or community pricing, you may be able to get a lower premium and help limit future premium increases. You may have to pass underwriting, but if you're healthy, you may be able to get on a more attractive pricing plan. What happens if my doctor retires or leaves my plan? This comes up a lot. In fact, this is the time of year when we see a lot of doctors and hospitals pulling out of Medicare Advantage contracts. And it all depends on how your plan is structured and whether your coverage is freedom-based or it's built around provider networks. If you have an HMO or a PPO, it's built around provider networks. And a big misconception is that if you lose your doctor on an Advantage plan, you can simply go to any Medicare doctor, have it covered under Part B, and then just pay your portion out of pocket. But it doesn't work that way. When you signed up for that Medicare Advantage plan, you opted out of Medicare Part B. You signed your Medicare benefits over to that insurance company. So that insurance company's rules are going to govern your care. You're paying your Part B, but you're getting your Part B through that Advantage plan and through their network. Now, if you've already got a Medicare supplement plan, it's easy for you. You just find another doctor who takes Medicare. And guess what? You don't like that new doctor? You go find another one. Can I change my prescription plans if my medications change? Well, you can review your Part D coverage every year during the annual enrollment, but you're otherwise locked in for the year. That doesn't mean there aren't options out there. We just heard about Trump RX being announced, and that's providing discounts on a lot of medicines. Good RX coupons, those have been available for years. A lot of my clients use those. People sometimes get certain medications through Canada. There's cost plus drugs. There's a lot of other options out there. A lot of times, as part of the overall mix of prescriptions, people might have one or two prescriptions that are overly expensive or not covered well by their Medicare drug plan, and that's what they attempt to source from another source. Now, if you bundled your prescription coverage with your Medicare coverage under an Advantage plan, to make a change, you have to change the entire plan, and you can only do that during the enrollment period. But if you have original Medicare and a Medicare supplement plan, all you have to do is adjust your drug plan every year as things change. You don't have to change and disrupt your overall strategy. That's one of the key reasons why I recommend original Medicare with a supplemental plan for almost everyone that I talk to. Should I review my Medicare coverage after a major life event? Well, absolutely. A move, maybe you've been semi-retired or working past 65 and you finally retire. God forbid, the loss of a spouse. These are all good reasons to review your strategy. But if you're reviewing it because of a health condition, it might be too late for you, especially if you've been diagnosed. And especially if you have the wrong strategy. For example, if you have a network-based plan and maybe you want to go to Mayo Clinic, but they won't take your Medicare Advantage plan because they don't take most of them, and you want to get a supplement, if you've already been diagnosed, it might be too late for you. And that's a great example of why I think it's important to think long-term when you first start Medicare, or when you get an opportunity to review your strategy while you're still healthy. And that's why I asked that key question. How do you want your healthcare to feel 10, 15, 20 years from now? It really changes the conversation. And if today's conversation has you wondering whether your current Medicare strategy is still going to fit life 5, 10, 15 years from now, I would be honored to help you think it through. If you want to set up a quick Medicare planning session with me, go to medicarequotes.com/Facebook. You can also call the office directly, 954-970-4760. Christine will answer and she'll help you find a time on my calendar, or just simply comment guide and I'll personally reach out to you. Well, thank you for spending part of your Wednesday afternoon with me. I hope today's conversation gave you a little more clarity and a little more confidence about your Medicare journey. If you found it helpful, I'd love it if you'd follow me here on Facebook or LinkedIn and subscribe and like here on YouTube. And feel free to share this episode with someone who's approaching Medicare and has some of those same questions. My goal is simple. It's to help more people make informed decisions before they have to make important ones. Until next time, I'm Casey Albin, your Medicare co-pilot. Thanks for joining me for another episode of Coffee with Casey, the weekly conversation that helps you navigate Medicare with confidence. Have a great week, and remember, the best Medicare decisions aren't made under pressure. They're made with a plan. I'll see you next time.